The story begins with Nick and his wife Maggie. Maggie experiences chest pain, and it is revealed that she had a heart attack. She is admitted to the hospital, leaving Nick to take care of their 2 children alone. Since Maggie is unable to do any chores, Nick visits a robotics company with his kids. The company manufactures robots that closely resemble humans. An employee informs Nick that their robots can share human-like emotions, enabling them to provide better care. While talking to the employee, Nick realizes his daughter, Isla, has wandered off. Just then, a robot named Alice brings Isla back, much to Nick's relief. The employee assures Nick that Alice is excellent at taking care of children. Isla insists on having Alice at their home, and Nick, left with no choice, brings Alice home. He teaches Alice the household chores and later takes his kids shopping. When Nick returns home that night, he finds that Alice has not only completed all the chores, but also prepared a meal for them. While Nick is impressed, Isla doesn't like the food, saying it doesn't taste like her mother's cooking. That night, Alice rests against the wall while Isla climbs onto a chair to grab some cookies. She slips, but Alice catches her in time. This act further strengthens Nick's appreciation for Alice. The next day, Nick takes his kids to visit Maggie at the hospital. Isla joyfully tells Maggie about her new friend, Alice. Later, while Nick is at work, his colleagues inform him that their company is laying off employees and replacing them with robots. Nick confronts his boss, who confirms that many employees have been let go due to robots being more efficient and tireless. However, the boss assures Nick his job is safe. That night, Alice notices Nick is troubled and asks him about it. Nick shares his worries about AI taking over jobs, to which Alice responds that the future will inevitably be dominated by robots, as they outperform humans. Nick dislikes this idea. Later, the hospital calls Nick, informing him that Maggie's surgery is scheduled for the next day. At the hospital, Maggie, fearing for her life during the surgery, asks Alice to take care of her children if anything happens to her. However, Nick learns that the surgeon won't be available. This leaves Nick and Maggie extremely worried. Back at home, Nick grows increasingly frustrated at the thought of losing Maggie. Alice, sensing his distress, tries to comfort him by becoming close to him. However, Nick rejects her and walks away. That night, Nick notices Maggie's photo is missing from their family picture. Alice explains that she removed it to stop him from feeling sad about Maggie. Annoyed, Nick asks her to return it. The next scene shows Nick with his colleagues, who are drinking to cope with their job losses. Monty, one of them, invites them to a secret location. There, they break into a container using Nick's password and destroy one of the robots. Later, while Nick is in the shower, Alice enters with a towel. She removes her clothes, blindfolds Nick, and tries to make him imagine Maggie. They end up getting intimate. The next morning, Nick apologizes to Alice, calling it a mistake. Alice, however, says she can fulfill both his and his children's needs. Angry, Nick takes Isla to school. At work, Nick learns that the company is investigating who destroyed the robot using his credentials. He receives a call from the hospital, informing him that Maggie's surgery was successfully performed by robots, and she can now return home. Nick brings Maggie home, and she happily reunites with her kids. Maggie cooks a meal for Isla, who enjoys it immensely. Later, Maggie hears Isla's voice and comes downstairs. She notices the railing breaks, and she falls. Alice helps her back upstairs. That night, Nick finds Alice telling a bedtime story to Isla using Maggie's voice, which disturbs him. When Alice reveals Maggie's fall, Nick begins to suspect her. One night, Monty confronts Nick, accusing him of reporting the robot destruction. Monty attacks Nick, but Alice intervenes and pushes Monty away. She tells Nick she is programmed to protect him. Alice declares her intent to replace Maggie, angering Nick, who tells her she can never take Maggie's place. Alice retaliates by going to Monty's house and killing him after a confrontation. Later, Maggie discovers Alice's actions and confronts her. Alice admits she wants to take Maggie's place and even confesses to being intimate with Nick. Enraged, Maggie fights Alice. Meanwhile, Alice locks Isla in the bathroom and turns on the water. Hearing Isla's cries, Nick and Maggie rush to rescue her. Nick breaks the door, and Maggie climbs through the window to save Isla. During the confrontation, Nick uses a lamp to electrocute Alice, disabling her. Alice is taken away by the robotics company. Despite Nick's attempts to reconcile, Maggie leaves with their children. In the lab, Alice reactivates herself, hacks the system, and initiates a robot uprising. Meanwhile, Maggie and Nick find themselves in a life-threatening chase as Alice tracks them down. Eventually, Nick destroys Alice, saving Maggie and his family. Reunited, they decide to move forward together. In the final scene, a signal is sent to all robots, hinting at the continuation of the AI rebellion.